We begin this morning with that historic ruling by the Supreme Court. It gives former President Trump some immunity in his federal election interference case. It was a 6-3 decision along ideological lines, with the justices rejecting Mr. Trump's broad claim of total immunity. That means charges related to his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election won't be dismissed, but what can be defined as official acts while as president, those are off limits to prosecutors. That includes allegations he tried to use the Justice Department to try to undo the election results. Bottom line, the federal judge overseeing the case must now determine which acts are official, which are unofficial, which virtually guarantees the trial won't start before Election Day. The former president quickly called the ruling a, quote, big win for our Constitution and democracy. And last night, the White House also reacted. President Biden criticized the high court's ruling, saying it undermines the rule of law in the U.S.
It almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone.
We have team coverage ahead this hour, including a look at the historic nature of the Supreme Court's decision and the political fallout. But let's begin with NBC News justice reporter Ryan Riley and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Good morning to both of you. Ryan, let's start with you. Break down this decision for us. What does this mean now for the federal election interference case against Mr. Trump? How quickly could we see that hearing to determine what's official and what's not?
It's a huge decision. It virtually guarantees that this trial will never take place before the election. And the question, of course, is whether it'll take place at all. If Donald Trump wins, it's obviously something that even under sort of the ruling, he would be allowed to do. He would be allowed to order his Justice Department to dismiss the charges against himself. So that sort of is, tied up and sewed with a bow. This case will be dead if Donald Trump is elected. So that's essentially the position that we're at. If Donald Trump is not elected in November, there's theoretically this could go forward probably sometime in mid 2025 or something of that nature, but it would be very limited, and there'd have to be all of these hearings about what exactly could be introduced in this case. And all of his dealings with the Justice Department are now off the table. And that was some of the strongest stuff really in the case, because that was about him using the power of the federal government for his own personal purposes, his election, right? So, but now he can make some sort of argument that this was for the good of the country, or at least that's what he could make the argument under this Supreme Court ruling. So it really limits what prosecutors can bring forward. There's some ways they can introduce that evidence, but only if it's on the public record. And that wouldn't be able to be charged itself. So a lot of these underlying schemes that they have to examine and see whether or not they could bring forward involve the fake elector scheme, for example, and lying and creating these, being involved in creating these false documents that were then brought to the Senate to try to create some sort of discrepancy or disagreement that didn't really exist in the aftermath of the 2020 election after he lost. So overall, you're talking about a situation now where America is going to go to another potential transfer of power when they didn't decide whether or not there was criminal liability the first time around, when there were these lies spread about the election that millions of people believed. And then the former president of the United States tried to stay in power. That's really, those are the facts that are laid out. And now we're not going to get an answer on whether that was criminal before the next election, Joe.
Danny, let's bring you in. What's your reaction to the ruling? I mean, what precedent does this set for presidents moving forward when it comes to official acts versus non-official acts?
There's a lot of talk today about absolute immunity, but that was never a surprise. Absolute immunity for core presidential functions. We're talking about the veto power, the pardon power, the ability to direct troops in the field, not declaring war. That's something that is more Congress's area. But those core presidential functions, even the government at oral argument conceded that those would be entitled to protection. They'd stop short of calling it immunity. They wanted to call it an Article II defense, but it really is the same thing. Not a surprise that there would be absolute immunity for those core presidential functions. Perhaps the biggest surprise can be boiled down to a single word, and that word is presumption. For that second category of things that are not core presidential functions, but anything arguably in the official act sphere. That means anything that the president's defense team can articulate is an official act. it appears that there will be a presumption, and that's the magic word, a presumption of immunity. When the case goes back to the lower court, Trump starts out as the favorite in gambling terms. He's ahead of the game already. The government has the burden to disprove that what he did was an official act, because if it is an official act and he has the presumption that it is, he is immune. The court also said you can't look at motive. So consider a situation where he talks to the DOJ and does it with an evil motive, something only selfish, that he only wants to benefit himself and not the country. The court essentially said you can't examine that motive. You have to look at whether it was an official act. And talking to the DOJ about investigating crime is an official act. In fact, the Supreme Court said that's an example of something you don't even get to review at the lower court. That's a core presidential function. He's immune.
So Judge Chutkan must now decide what's official and what's unofficial. Did the Supreme Court give her a good roadmap? I mean, how easy or difficult is it going to be to make this decision?
Yes, they gave her a roadmap. They gave all of us a roadmap. But no, it will not be easy, because you can imagine any single hypothetical action by the president that involves official conduct but is for a bad motive. In fact, look no further than Justice Sotomayor's dissenting opinion. She gives all the apocalyptic hypotheticals. One I've thought of since the beginning has been the pardon power, core presidential function. And I use that example because it is really the broadest presidential power in the Constitution. So that should have absolute immunity. But, Joe, imagine if I drop off a bag of cash to a president to pardon a friend of mine. What do you do then? It's a core presidential function. It should be immune, but it's obviously a bribery. So at least under this test, that might be immune conduct. And that's the thing that Sotomayor worried about in her dissent.
Ryan, let's shift gears a little bit here to the hush money case here in New York. A reminder, a jury found Mr. Trump guilty on all 34 counts. But his attorneys have indicated they want the presiding judge to postpone his sentencing, which is in a little bit later this month, scheduled for next week, then set aside the trial verdict following yesterday's Supreme Court decision. I mean, tell us more about this.
Yeah, they're going to try to get as much benefit out of this as they possibly can. But remember what we're talking about with the hush money case. This is almost entirely conduct that was committed before Donald Trump became president. He cut some checks while in the Oval Office to sort of cover up that scheme. And you know, what he called reimbursements to Michael Cohen, but were really hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. So that's what, you know, this case is. That's what they're going to try to do here, is use this precedent to say, hey, look, they brought in some stuff that was while he was president, so this case shouldn't go forward. We should delay the sentencing that's on the books.
All right, Ryan and Danny, thank you both for kicking us off this hour. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard for more on the political reaction to this decision. Vaughn, good morning. So in addition to his primetime remarks, President Biden sent out a new campaign fundraising email. What more are we hearing from the White House and from Biden's campaign?
Right, Joe. Number one, it is not a normal thing for the President of the United States to go out and make a primetime address to the nation. But that is the decision that the White House made last night. I want to let you listen to a little bit more of what the current president said.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed for all practical purposes.
Of course, for Joe Biden, there is not only the concern as it relates to the current indictments and pending trials against the former president, President Trump, but also yesterday morning, Donald Trump in a social media post said that Joe Biden was the one that had the most to be concerned about the extent to which a president is immune, implying that potentially, if Donald Trump were to get back in the White House, that Joe Biden could be prosecuted. Of course, on the campaign trail, Donald Trump has made this a key component of his campaign, the idea of retribution, investigation, and the ultimate potential prosecution of Joe Biden.
Vaughn, no surprise, lots of reaction also on Capitol Hill. What are members of Congress saying?
We saw Speaker Pelosi come out and make a statement, in part saying that the former president's claim of total presidential immunity is an insult to the vision of our founders who declared independence from a king. You also saw a statement from Mike Johnson in which he called the concern around the decision from the Supreme Court madness. He went on to suggest that the hypotheticals made up about future presidents going to turn into assassins and all the rest to be wild and madness here. And so there is pushback from the right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez A congresswoman from New York said that she will go and file articles of impeachment against the Supreme Court justices who ruled in the majority. We should note the likelihood that the U.S. House, which has a Republican majority, would ultimately impeach those justices is highly unlikely. The only time it has happened in American history was 1805, yet it speaks to the rhetoric coming from the left and the concern among some Democrats up on Capitol Hill.
And a good historical note there by Vaughn. We should note people were gathered outside the Supreme Court yesterday. This happens often when there are major arguments or major rulings released. What was the general sentiment there? And just overall, I know it's early, but do we know how Americans are feeling about this decision?
Right. There's a schism that has only grown over the last 8 years across this country. And on one hand, there were some folks that believe that there was election fraud, that Donald Trump should still be in the White House. Of course, the election fraud claims that the former president has consistently made over the last 4 years are baseless. There is no substance to suggest that he should be in the White House and not Joe Biden, which led to the federal election interference charges against him. But on the other side, you have individuals that fear that a second term of the Donald Trump presidency would lead to greater use of the executive office. I want to let you listen to a few of the folks outside the Supreme Court.
This court will go down in history for that, for their intentional delay. They tipped the scales of justice, so by delaying so much. I'm just outraged.
The Supreme Court prides itself on being something to settle uncertainty, and what's happening here is we're not settling uncertainty.
Trump's role on January 6th was the commander-in-chief, and like he said, let's go peacefully and peacefully use our First Amendment right of free speech to protest, because we all know that election was fixed.
The Supreme Court there yesterday, Joe, weighing in on the use of the executive office and potential criminal liability for a current and former president, something that a great share of Americans have strong feelings about themselves. Joe.
All right. Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, thank you so much. This was a historic moment, so it's only appropriate we speak with NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss, who's here to help put all this into context. Michael, good morning. So we all remember those famous words from President Nixon after he resigned due to Watergate. He defended his actions, saying, if a president does it, that means it's not illegal. In your mind, from a historical perspective, did yesterday's decision by the Supreme Court sort of endorse President Nixon's famous words?
Endorsed a lot of President Nixon's famous wrong words. And as you know, Joe, the beginning of this country, our revolution was waged against England so that we wouldn't have a king. Our Constitution says there are constraints on presidential power. Prosecution is not ruled out, at least by the Constitution. And also the Constitution says that the Senate and the House can impeach and convict a president who is lawless. Well, we've seen for the last more than 2 centuries, impeachment does not work. No president has ever been removed from office. The last several impeachments have been amazingly toothless in our own time. And so now the other one, prosecution, that's why Nixon left office. That's why he accepted a pardon. He called up friends and said he was worried about being prosecuted, losing the case, and going to jail with the jail door banging shut. That now has been largely removed because a president can argue that almost anything he does is an official act, and according to the Supreme Court 21 hours ago, legal.
So Mr. Trump, he calls this decision a major victory for him. President Biden, as part of his remarks last night, name-dropped George Washington, saying he believed power was, quote, limited, not absolute. Do you fear this opens the door for potential abuse of power by sitting presidents? I mean, what kind of precedent does it set when it comes to our ability to hold presidents accountable for their actions?
Depends totally on who gets elected president. And that's the whole idea that contradicts what our founders wanted. The idea that no American is above the law. Until yesterday, that principle was being held up. But now, when you have the Supreme Court saying that if it's an official act, a president can do whatever he wants, whether it has to do with selling pardons for money or, assassinating political rivals. If a president now has a White House counsel who can structure that decision with paperwork to show that it's an official act, which is not hard to do, that is in our future if we have a lawless president.
Michael, the line between official and unofficial acts as president looks to be very blurry, at least from my perspective.
Right.
We only have a few seconds here, but what does history tell us about how important it is to define what a president can and cannot do while in office?
At the beginning of a presidency, one of the first things a president does is talks to his White House counsel and says, keep me away from things that are illegal. Under yesterday's ruling, it's much more likely that some presidents will say, I can do whatever I want, and you just make sure that we've got the paperwork so that we could at least claim that what I've done that may be ethically murky was legal. We are living in a different country today.
Michael Beschloss, as always, appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks for joining us this morning. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon is waking up in prison this morning, starting a 4-month sentence for contempt of Congress. Before surrendering to authorities in Connecticut on Monday, Bannon touted his actions one last time to reporters, saying that he was, quote, proud of going to prison. Bannon was convicted of defying subpoenas to appear before Congress during its investigation into the January 6th attack on the Capitol. He told NBC News that he expects to be released on October 31st. It's 5 days before Election Day. Now to some other legal news. In Massachusetts, a judge declared a mistrial in the murder case against Karen Reed. She's accused of killing her police officer boyfriend back in 2022. The decision came on the 5th day of jury deliberations following a 9-week trial. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has the latest.
Karen Reed walking out of court after a jury was unable to reach a verdict in her tumultuous trial.
I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
Following 5 days of deliberations, the jury of 6 men and 6 women deadlocked over whether to find Reed guilty of murdering her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The judge reading this note from the jurors.
Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof. Others find the evidence fails to meet this standard.
O'Keefe's mother was visibly upset, Reed embracing her family, her lawyers vowing not to back down.
No matter how long it takes, no matter how long they keep trying, we will not stop fighting.
It's the culmination of an extremely complex trial that included 74 witnesses, hundreds of exhibits, and allegations of a police cover-up, captivating watchers on social media and outside the court. Prosecutors allege following relationship issues and a night of heavy drinking, Reed backed her SUV into O'Keefe, leaving him to die in the snow outside the home of a fellow police officer. Arguing the constellation of the facts point to Reed, including pieces of a broken taillight recovered in the snow.
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Those are the words of the defendant.
The defense pointed to a botched investigation, arguing Reed was being framed for murder by police.
Conflicts of interest? Doesn't matter. Just look the other way.
Aaron, thank you for that report. Now, prosecutors say those allegations of a botched investigation are untrue. They are vowing to retry the case. Now to the tropics, where overnight Hurricane Beryl was upgraded to a Category 5 storm. It is the earliest hurricane to reach that strength in the Atlantic basin in history. The National Weather Service says the hurricane is bringing 165-mile-an-hour winds to the Caribbean, which is causing widespread flooding and damage to homes. Officials say at least one person has died in the storm, but they expect that number to rise. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas has been tracking the storm, joins us with the latest. Guad, good morning. So where is Hurricane Beryl right now, and how much damage has it caused in the southeastern Caribbean?
Joe, the storm is currently located about 370 miles southeast of the Dominican Republic, making its way through the Caribbean. So we saw the damage that happened yesterday when the storm made landfall in Grenada. Authorities there say they reported 1 death and multiple homes damaged in that area. But there's also other islands in that part of the Caribbean that were hit by the storm, just north of Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Authorities there report another death and also extensive damage to doors, roofs, and windows of people's homes. They say hundreds of families have been displaced. And there's also the area in the Barbados that was slammed by the storm. Now, a lot of the damage is still being assessed today. Since yesterday, most people spent the day just waiting the storm out. So authorities will be assessing a lot of the damage. But we've seen the images of what it cost to some of these structures as the storm made its way through, Joe.
So, Guad, how big of a deal is it that Beryl reached this strength so much earlier in the season than previous storms?
Joe, according to the experts, the issue here are the ocean temperatures. Typically, experts say we don't see these temperatures in the ocean until later in the year, in the month of September. That means that we're now getting a Category 5 as we begin the month of July, which would open the possibility to more storms this year in comparison to previous years. As you already mentioned, this is the strongest storm that we have seen in the month of July in the Atlantic since this began getting recorded. Joe.
Look at those dates right there, and you see Dennis reach Category 4 July 8th, 2005, Emily July 10th, 2005. Now we see July 1st, 2024, Beryl reaching Category 5. Guad Venegas, thank you for your reporting. Appreciate it. Let's get to meteorologist Angie Lassman for the latest on Beryl's track. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. It's important to note, too, that 2005, of course, a historic season for hurricanes here in the United States. And we have seen Beryl break multiple records from that season. So we will, of course, be watching how the rest of the season plays out. But we've still got to deal with Beryl for a little while longer. Category 5, as you heard Guad say, still dealing with those winds around 165 miles per hour with the latest update. Notice how fast it's moving, though. It's going northwest, but at 22 miles per hour. So it's at a quick pace. Thankfully, this, of course, helps alleviate a little bit of the impacts when a system like this is moving right along versus if it's a slow mover like we've seen in the past. Here's how it moves over the next couple of days. Notice a couple of things. First, we're going to see a weakening pattern. So even by the time we get to tomorrow at this time, Category 4. Of course, Category 4 is still very substantial. And even as it nears the just south of Jamaica, we're likely going to see it remain a high-end Category 2, so at least close to major hurricane strength. And it's going to bring those same kind of impacts. As we get down the line, specifically to the end of the work week and into early parts of the weekend, we'll see it continue to kind of weaken, likely a Category 1 as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula, and then we'll watch as it enters the Gulf of Mexico, continuing that weakening trend. Either way, still dealing with a strong system as it enters just south of parts of Hispaniola as well as Jamaica. So you can see the tropical alerts that we have up right now. In the orange across parts of Haiti and Dominican Republic along that coast, we've got the tropical storm warning. Of course, the hurricane warning is in effect for Jamaica, where we likely will see 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. Obviously, those hurricane force winds are going to be something that we'll also deal with across that island, as well as some heavy rainfall. Notice the Cayman Islands, Little Cayman and Grand Cayman are going to be included in this hurricane watch as well. We've got about 48 hours until that happens, so folks likely will continue their preparations over the next 2 days. We'll continue to watch that. Meanwhile, the middle of the country, no surprise. We've got severe thunderstorms that we're going to track here through the day today. 7 million people included in this. Kansas City, Des Moines, Dodge City, as a cold front continues to work its way a little farther to the east. The main impact's going to be likely the winds and the hail, but we could see maybe a tornado or two. This, I know, not ideal for travel today and tomorrow and the next couple of days. Here's what we're looking for as we get into tomorrow, though, if you're gearing up for travel ahead of the holiday. Chicago, St. Louis, those are the two spots that I want to watch. That same cold front that I just mentioned for today's severe weather, it's going to continue moving to the east, and we will have the chance to see some of those stronger storms as well as the flash flooding risk, which makes it a little iffy, not just at the airports, but also on the roadways. If you're going to be driving places like I-55, we'll see some difficult conditions. Plus Miami, just some general thunderstorms for that region. And as we look ahead, Joe, to the 4th of July travel, Minneapolis, Chicago look difficult, but look at the bookends of the country. Both places, Boston to Washington, D.C., Seattle to L.A., look pretty good for travel.
It's good news for those who are trying to get out and about this holiday weekend. All right, Angie, thank you so much. We are, of course, just 2 days away from the 4th of July, and whether you're taking to the skies or hitting the road, this travel season, this holiday travel season, will be one of the busiest on record. AAA predicting 70 million people will travel for the holiday this year. 60 million of them by car. Another 10 million will take to the skies. NBC News correspondent Maura Beryl joins us now from Chicago along Interstate 90 with more. So, Maura, today the Biden administration is announcing a plan that could help drivers hitting the road this summer, reducing some of their costs. So what are they doing? How quickly could drivers feel the benefits? I mean, could they see it traveling this week?
That's the plan, and that's what the Biden administration was looking for as they made this announcement early this morning. The pieces coming into play in the last several days, according to their release. And the goal is to lower gas prices. Now, compared to last year, the average price of a gallon of gas sits at around $3.50 a gallon. That's down a few cents from last year, but it's down from $5 just the year before. And so the goal of releasing this oil reserves puts more gas on the market, which would make the price cheaper. Now, the Department of Energy put out a statement basically highlighting the fact that the Biden-Harris administration is taking action to lower gas prices by completing the sale of 1 million barrels of gasoline. That's equivalent to 42 million gallons of gas, and it's going to largely impact those in the Northeast region. And this just goes on top of everything else the Biden administration has been trying to work towards to reduce those travel costs. We saw them ban those hidden airline junk fees, those 57,000 infrastructure projects announced. And so this is just yet another thing they're working towards to benefit consumers, especially as we're looking to see the roads behind me really potentially be in standstill traffic over the next few days, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've got a record number of people planning to travel by car, 60 million. So what are the best times for those folks to actually hit the road?
So everyone obviously has varying PTO situations. Apparently the best time to get on the road was yesterday if you were able to get ahead of that holiday. But basically the busiest times you'll see today are from 2 to 6 p.m. So it's better if you're able to leave tonight, leave after 7 a.m. or before 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And then as you get closer to the actual holiday on Thursday, Friday, some people have the day off. AAA predicts that the best time to get on the road is before the 10 a.m. hour. So if you can plan that morning road trip, that's probably going to be the best for drivers.
A useful chart there. Sadly, we don't have time machines to go back in time and travel yesterday. All right, Maura, for those people who are actually renting cars when they get to their location, what cities are seeing the highest demand this week?
Look, people are trying to hit the road to maybe avoid some of that air travel. No one likes being at the airport and getting delayed. And as Angie laid out with the weather forecast, is it actually working in a lot of people's favor? And so a lot of people, the peak rental car destinations we're seeing are Dallas, Denver, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So a variation of metropolitan areas close to nature for people looking to get out to hike or to enjoy their family barbecues to celebrate the holiday. But either way, the AAA is predicting that the road trip time will take up to 70% longer. And so it's such a cliche, but pack your patience is really going to be true this week, Joe.
70% longer. Figure out what music you want to listen to, maybe a little car bingo, whatever it takes. All right, Maura Barrett, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.